Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
Self-indulgent benefits of doing this podcast, and we are now up to about 91 or 92, I think, is that you go to certain events and you meet certain people and you think that is a subject that I am personally pretty fascinated about. I think has really wider value. And ordinarily you'd scuttle off back to your office and think, well, I'm not sure what to do with that. But with a podcast, you can invite them on. And so I welcome today Colin Magee from Logical Glue. Welcome, Colin.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, sir. And we were at an event, actually, of another podcast guest, I have to say. Guy Blaskey from Pooch and Muck was doing a presentation at which Colin and I met. And Logical Glue is all about real-time predictive analytics and how that enables organisations to kind of create... Colin, why am I trying to explain it? Tell me what you do.
Okay, with pleasure. So, yes, Logical Glue is a predictive analytics company, which means we're using data not just to tell you what's happening now, but to answer the sort of highest value question, what happens next in any given context. So we're using past data that businesses have collected to build models that can literally predict the future. That sounds like a very esoteric term. It has very concrete applications in business. If we think of finance and the booming world of alternate finance, where we tend to do a lot of work at the moment, building such models and doing predictive analytics in real time means literally being able to determine when an applicant applies for a loan, whether or not they're creditworthy, whether they can afford the loan, and therefore what product you should present to them, and whether you should indeed accept or reject them or refer them as a customer. In opposition to a kind of manual approach of having to sift through their application details and records from a credit bureau, and perhaps using a credit score with some kind of rules-based approach in order to determine that decision. And generally, so-called machine learning approaches, if applied in the right way, can do better than a human over a large amount of data. The applications are endless, really, for predictive analytics. It's all driven by the kind of data that you're collecting and whether or not it's a viable outcome. So lots of applications in e-commerce and marketing, such as predicting a customer's propensity to buy, or indeed a new visitor to your site's propensity to buy or to browse. And if you can do that with better than average accuracy, the average accuracy being the kind of default rate of conversion on your website, for example, you can then start to use that information to drive personalization. And present certain discount offers or different content to your customers. Moving into the world of CRM, an existing customer base, you can use predictive analytics to predict when customers are likely to churn, which can be hugely valuable. Think of giant telcos with customers coming to the end of their contract who may be likely to switch. It's highly valuable to know those customers most at risk of attrition. So again, you can take action. We're doing work in healthcare at the moment in terms of drug adherence and drug persistence, so helping large pharmaceutical companies to determine which patients may be at risk of falling off a long-term drug treatment, for example. So there are really very diverse applications, and what Logical Glue are doing is making it easier to go from raw data to predictive models that can be applied in real time quicker than ever before. Predictive analytics as a concept isn't necessarily that new. It's been around for a couple of decades at least, but it was only previously large companies that were able to hire the teams to look after the data, pay the large costs associated with curating data, hire teams of data scientists, who used to be called statisticians back in the day, then quants, and now the in vogue term is data scientist. But these operations are quite expensive to set up. And the kind of models that are produced are kind of fit for the lab, but not necessarily for use in real time. That's often a recoding exercise from yet more IT project teams to integrate with systems that can process data in real time and then return results. What we've seen at Logical Glue is a big gap in the market. My whole experience is in predictive analytics software companies, so I've seen this firsthand, this emerging gap between SMEs, if you like, who are collecting data all the time and can rapidly accumulate data if you're starting an e-commerce site or a lending business, that really big companies only used to be able to accumulate a couple of decades ago. And they need to be able to move from that raw data into actionable models very quickly. So we're helping them do that, go from raw data to accurate predictive models, and then last but not least, to be able to deploy them in real time and understand why the model is making its decision. So it's not just computer says no.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, and I think predictive analytics have been around for a long time. But I think what you're involved in, and what's happening, of course, is that the smaller businesses and the SME market can now, extract some value from the process in the way that was only available to large companies in the past. And I think that's the exciting element of it, because almost every company of any size is sitting on data, and they probably are doing very, very little about it, and certainly not extracting any juice from it.
Yeah, that's right. We see that's where we see the huge opportunity of the future, not just for Logical Glue, but for predictive analytics in general, is to bring it into the mainstream. I think that's really what we're saying here.
And I think, and Colin, if I can actually drill into what this means, and so the impact for an individual business, because this is all a bit kind of helicopter view at the moment, certainly from someone as simple as I am in terms of technology and what it actually means. There's a case study on your website that I saw relating to a kind of credit referencing agency, I think. I'm just looking at it now, actually, see if I can recollect it. And there was some really quite remarkable, the impact of the work that you did for them or with them had some remarkable impact on their bottom line. Could you just talk us through a little bit of that particular case study and the results that came out of it?
Sure. And that case study I think you're referring to is kind of generic in terms of the benefits of companies we're working with in alternate finance.
Right.
So the challenge in alternate finance, or even mainstream finance for that matter, particularly in the lending scenario, is the impact to your business of defaults. So applicants you've accepted either in business lending or consumer finance, be it short-term or long-term loans, of those that default versus those that you accept, those customers that you accept. And of course, the healthiest balance is where you're able to increase your so-called pass rate, so the customers you accept, and minimize your default rate, those customers who are going to present you with credit risk. And your profitability, your yield, all the metrics of your business are really driven by those two basic dynamics. So the challenge is, without a predictive model, if I accept everybody who comes to me, I have a 100% pass rate, but I've got my maximum default rate. If I accept nobody, of course, I don't accept any defaults, but I have no business at all. So there's a tension between these two sides. And predictive analytics is helping overcome that tension by discriminating properly between those customers who are likely to be creditworthy and those customers who are likely to be uncreditworthy. And in the particular case you're talking about, we'd worked with a case study with Call Credit, who'd given us hundreds of thousands of prime credit card customers, and presented with a particularly challenging problem, actually. These are prime customers. There's a very low instance of default. It was less than 1%. And the challenge was to be able to increase pass rates on a completely unseen population, so we can test the model properly, where we knew outcomes. So it's a good benchmark for testing. To increase pass rates while at the same time keeping the defaults the same. And actually, we didn't only manage to improve the recognition of defaults from memory from about 68% recognition of that within that 1% overall defaulting class to 80% recognition of the defaults. We also managed to improve the pass rates at the same time from the mid-60s to about 75% of the population. So if you think you're bringing on more creditworthy customers and you're reducing the defaulting ones, there's clear business benefit there. Hope that makes sense, Andrew.
Well, it absolutely makes sense to me, and I think the figure actually that you haven't included, which I think will have a massive impact, is that on that case study, the increase in profitability was from 5% to, or the typical increase in profitability was from 5% to 20%, which is astonishing bottom line
Yep, and those gains are very feasible. Of course, it all depends on the APRs relating to your particular product as to what the specific profit impact is going to be. But yeah, we see anywhere upwards of 20+%.
I mean, that's clearly very, very sector specific and relates to finance decision making, etc. But the kind of companies you're working with in terms of size and sector, is it pretty varied? I mean, how would you say there are certain companies that should be dealing with this kind of insight almost from day one?
Yes, there are. And so we're helping startups. And you may be thinking, well, how can a startup be building models on their data because they haven't accumulated any data yet? What's particularly interesting in the alternate finance space is that we and they work with credit bureaus where you can get a proxy of the kind of population they're going to accept. So, for example, if you've got a product that is a loan of 12 to 24 months with a kind of loan range that you're planning between, let's say, £1,000 and £10,000, you can get from the credit bureaus lots of anonymized data in terms of not knowing the individual's names and addresses, but knowing all of their personal attributes like their time in employment, annual income, and so on and so forth, where you have a range of loans that equate to the product that you're intending to launch that you can use to build your models going forward. So even if you haven't got your own data, there are increasingly, and this doesn't just apply to alternate finance, third-party sources that you can pull data that will be very similar to your business that you can use to build models that you can then go to market with in real time. So that's the startup scenario. Mm-hmm. For a more mature company that may have been applying predictive analytics for some time, what we're able to offer is more accurate, out-of-the-box modeling approaches. So using state-of-the-art techniques that are generally improvements on statistical methods that have been used in the past, and also preparing the data very well automatically, because the way you prepare the data, the boring part of this, is actually key to the kind of accuracy that you can get from models. So for more mature operations, we can offer more accurate models and getting those out to market quicker than ever before.
Mm. Well, listen, it's a fascinating space, and I know you're short on time, so I appreciate very much that you've been able to go through that in such detail. If people want to get hold of you, Colin, it's logicalglue.co.uk.
It's .com. We do have .co.uk, but yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at the UK version, but it's .com as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Colin.
You're welcome. Pleasure to talk to you, Andrew.
Fascinating subject. Have a great day. That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.